He hadn't planned to go. Weddings weren't his thing, especially not hers. But when the invitation arrived in a cream envelope with her handwriting on it, something in him cracked. Maybe it was pride, maybe punishment, or maybe it was hope. In its most delusional form, Eli stood at the back of the garden chapel, leaning against a column draped in ivy and silk. His suit was too tight across the shoulders, the late June heat curling the back of his neck. But none of that mattered, because she stepped out. Sunlight turned the edges of her white dress golden, and her veil trailed behind like a breath she couldn't catch. She looked radiant, stunning, devastating, and her eyes, God help him, those storm-colored eyes, found his through the crowd like they always had. 1,000 people could have stood between them, and she would have still known where he was. And when she looked at him, the world dropped away. Her lips parted, just slightly, barely, but enough to undo him. He should have left then, walked out, before the priest spoke or the ring slipped on, before her vows sealed something that already felt like betrayal. But he stayed. Through the applause and the kiss and the perfect bridal smile, he stayed. And her eyes kept finding him, not with guilt, not apology, something worse, hunger, regret, that quiet, violent ache of all the things they never said. Later, when dusk painted the sky in lavender and peach, Eli found himself at the reception, drink in hand, gaze locked on her from across the lawn. He shouldn't be here. She shouldn't be watching him dance with someone else. But she was, watching every brush of his hand, every lean-in laugh, every smile that wasn't for her. And when he finally set his glass down and walked away from the crowd, he knew she'd follow. She always followed. The vineyard's edge was quiet, the music distant. Fireflies danced in the vines. The air smelled like roses and risk. Eli, her voice was soft, barely there. He turned. She was still in her dress, barefoot now, holding the skirt like it was something that might burn her. Her veil was gone. Her hair was loose. Her wedding ring sparkled in the fading light, and still, her eyes held only him. Say it, he said, voice hoarse. She blinked. Say what? Whatever's been buried between us. Whatever this is, because you're husbands inside, and you're out here with me. She stepped closer. Do you think I didn't feel it? Her voice trembled. Every time you looked at me, every time you touched me, like the world would end if you stopped. It did end. Kira, you ended it. Her hand brushed his chest barely a touch, and he nearly forgot how to breathe. I married him, Eli, but I never stopped choosing you. The words hit like thunder behind his ribs. He pulled her closer, one hand at her waist, the other threading through her hair. Then why aren't I the one you said I do to? Tears shimmered in her eyes, but desire drowned them. She kissed him, and the world shattered. The kiss wasn't gentle, it was war. 1,000 buried nights, every stolen second, every whispered almost. Her mouth tasted like desperation and defiance, and he matched it with a hunger that had waited too long. His hand slid down her back, pressing her to him like he needed to feel every inch. Her fingers clutched at his shirt, pulling it open, buttons scattering onto the grass. Tell me to stop. He growled against her neck. Don't you dare. She moaned as his mouth found her collarbone, kissing the skin she'd covered in. Promises that weren't his. Her dress slipped off one shoulder, then the other. until it clung only to her hips. She was stunning, flushed, trembling, wanting, and his. In that moment, no one else existed. Not the guess, not the vows, not even the ring that still clung to her finger like a lie. Only this, only them, only her eyes, still choosing him. The moon hung low as if ashamed of what it witnessed. The vines swayed in slow approval, brushing against her bare shoulder as she leaned into him. The world was blurred now, just shadows, breath, and need. Kira's fingers trembled as they trailed down Ellie's chest, tracing the line where buttons once held his restraint in place. She had crossed the threshold, and she knew it. There was no going back to that perfect reception, to champagne toasts and polite laughter. Not after this. Not after her lips had tasted everything they weren't supposed to want. Ellie's hands gripped her waist tight, desperate as though she might disappear again if he let her go. But it wasn't about holding on anymore. It was about release. Her body curved against his like it remembered every stolen night they never allowed themselves to have. Every touch that never happened, but burned in memory just the same. You shouldn't be here, he whispered against her throat. Then, stop me, she whispered back, her voice a broken dare. But he didn't. He kissed her like it was punishment and mercy all at once. Slow at first, with lips that explored, questioned, and remembered. Then, deeper, rougher. Like time had lost all patience. Her dress slipped down her body, soft fabric pooling around her ankles like surrender. She stood there bare to the cool air, bare to him, and not once did she flinch. Not once did she look away. I waited, he said, voice low and raw. I waited for you to choose me. She cupped his face, pulling his mouth back to hers. I did. Too late. He guided her down to the soft earth beneath the vines, the rose stretching around them like a secret sanctuary. Their breaths mingled in shallow gasps, hearts pounding in tandem. She pressed her hands to his chest as he hovered over her, as if reminding herself that this was real, that he was real, that every kiss, every shiver, every whispered name against her skin wasn't just a fantasy locked behind regret. You still taste like heartbreak, he murmured, his lips at her collarbone. And you still touch me like I'm yours. She arched under him as his mouth trailed lower, tracing the valley between promises broken and desires awakened. Her fingers tangled in his hair as he kissed the softest parts of her, the parts no one else had dared to discover. Not even the man she married. His hands explored her slowly, reverently, until her body responded without hesitation. She was heat and longing and silk-smooth skin against the calluses of his fingers. And when he entered her, it was with a quiet gasp that cracked open the sky. They moved like waves caught in a storm, wild, fluid, lost in each other. Each thrust pushed her closer to the edge, and with every roll of her hips, she told him without words, I chose wrong. I chose safety. I chose silence. But I still want you. He buried his face in her neck, breath hot, rhythm reckless. You're still mine, he groaned. Always, she gasped, fingernails digging into his back. Their climax came like thunder rising, impossible to outrun, shattering every fragile wall they tried to build. She cried out his name like a confession, her back arched in surrender. He followed with a breathless curse, collapsing against her, his heart racing wild, and unrepentant. They lay there in the stillness, bodies tangled, skin damp, the world hushed in aftermath. For a moment, it was just them and the stars. No vows, no rings, just a memory written on skin. "I broke everything," she whispered. He kissed her shoulder, the taste of her still on his lips. "Then break it again, if it brings you back to me." She turned her head, eyes meeting his. They were no longer storm gray, they were drowning. "I can't go back in there. You don't have to." Silence stretched between them like a thin glass thread, beautiful and terrifying. In the distance, music still played. Someone laughed. Someone toasted. But out here, under the nights on a sky, she had finally spoken the only truth that mattered with her body, her eyes, her voice in the dark. She was his dot, and everything else was a lie dressed in white. The world didn't end that night, but it didn't stay the same either. When Kira returned to the reception, her lips were kissed raw. Her hair tousled like wind had wrapped secrets into it, and her wedding dress clung to her body in places no one else had touched. She walked in through the side garden gate, quiet, composed, but forever altered. She didn't look at her husband, not once. Her fingers found the stem of a champagne glass, but she didn't drink it. Her lips pressed against its edge like she still tasted someone else. Eli didn't go back inside. He stood alone beneath the stars, shirt open, chest rising and falling with guilt that didn't feel like guilt at all. It felt like justice, like fate rewriting itself with trembling hands. He could still feel her beneath him, warm, open, whispering truths she buried behind a wedding veil. And he knew deep in the marrow of who he was that it wasn't over. That whatever fire they'd lit between those vines wasn't going out. Quietly. The next day, she texted him just 2 words. "Meet me. No time, no place." But he knew. Their vineyard, where everything tasted like freedom. When she arrived, her hands were shaking. "I didn't sleep," she said, climbing into the passenger seat of his car like it wasn't a betrayal just to be there. "I laid beside a man who doesn't know. I was never his." Eli didn't say anything. He drove. The road curved like her spine had beneath him. Wind swept through the cracked window, catching strands of her hair. She didn't look at him, but her hand drifted slowly to his thigh, fingers brushing against denim with the same silent ache that had never left them. At the overlook where sky met vineyard in a slow collapse, he parked. She turned to him, breathing heavier now, her wedding ring glinting like irony in the dying light. "I've never done anything like this," she whispered. "I know." She leaned in slowly, like her soul was dragging behind her, begging her not to. But her mouth met his anyway, and this kiss, this one, was different. It wasn't wild like the first. It wasn't hurried or desperate. It was reverent, a slow surrender. She straddled him in the seat, hands sliding up his chest, her thighs bracketing him with hungry elegance. The center console pressed awkwardly into her leg, but she didn't care. He didn't care. Their mouths stayed locked, and his hands found the curve of her hips, grounding himself in her warmth. "I dreamt of this," she breathed between kisses. "Not once. Every night." Ellie's fingers slid beneath the hem of her dress, tracing the inside of her thigh with a heat that made her gasp. "Then stop dreaming," he said, voice low. "Start remembering." She sank onto him slowly, with a breathless moan that filled the car like incense. Her fingers clutched the back of the seat, head thrown back, lips parted. He kissed the hollow of her throat, the underside of her jaw, her collarbone, each touch a prayer to the body that never forgot him. Their rhythm was slow and deliberate, a kind of sacred violence that left bruises shaped like truth. Her cries were soft, bitten back, but every time she moaned his name, it sliced through the air like betrayal's sweetest wound. And then he heard it, the buzz of a phone vibrating in the glove compartment. They froze. Her husband's name lit, the screen in pale blue letters. She stared at it, breath caught, chest heaving against his. The ring on her finger had never looked heavier. "Don't answer it," he said. She didn't. She leaned forward instead, lips brushing his ear. "He knows something's wrong." Eli held her tighter. "Because something is." She rocked her hips again, slow, defiant. "Then let it be wrong. Let me be ruined." He kissed her like destruction, holding her while the world outside blurred. Every thrust was a promise unspoken, every cry a confession wrapped in skin. And when she shattered again, clinging to him like he was the last honest thing she'd ever know, the silence that followed was louder than any vow she'd ever spoken. Her phone kept ringing, but her silence, it screamed his name. It started with questions, innocent ones. Her husband, Devin, would smile too tightly, ask where she'd been longer than she should have, ask who she was texting, and why she showered before bed instead of in the morning. Like always, Kira answered with the ease of a woman practiced in half-truths, smiling while her pulse pounded in guilt. But even lies wear thin when your skin still smells like someone else's hands. She thought she could keep the door shut, compartmentalize, but her eyes betrayed her. The way they searched a room for someone who was never supposed to be there. The way she bit her lip at the wrong moment or stared too long at nothing at all. Love doesn't leave quietly, and lust doesn't play dead. She told Eli they had to stop, and he nodded, like he understood. But she didn't delete his number, didn't block him, didn't erase the photos she swore she never took. And she certainly didn't stop thinking about the way his breath felt on her throat when she moaned his name. In the front seat of his car, he didn't make it easy. One text. That's all he sent. "You left your perfume on my skin." It unraveled her. That night, she slipped out of bed like a ghost, wrapped in a robe, pretending she needed water. But she didn't go to the kitchen. She sat in the hallway with her, back against the wall, and stared at the wedding photo on the wall, the one where her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She messaged Eli back. "Come to the lake house. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. One last time." She told herself it would be the last. She needed it to be. When he walked through the old wooden door, damp from the rain, jacket slung over his shoulder, she didn't speak. Neither did he. Their silence was a language now, one fluent in want. She led him to the bedroom with shaking hands. The same room she once made love in with a man she called husband, but never like this. Never with a body that burned just from being looked at. Her robe fell to the floor. She stood there, bare, no secrets, no defenses. Eli stepped forward slowly, his fingers trailing down her arm until their hands met and held like a promise already broken. "I tried," she whispered, her voice caught in the knot of her throat. "I really tried to let you go. I never did." he said, pulling her closer. I never even wanted to. His mouth met hers and the world vanished again. Her back hit the bed, his weight pressing into her like gravity rediscovered. He worshipped her with aching slowness, his lips mapping every inch like she was a country he'd lost in war and finally reclaimed. Her breath caught, soft gasps turning to moans as his hands slid between her thighs. She opened to him, willingly, desperately pulling him into her with a hunger that was part relief, part apology. Every movement said what words never could. I need you. I missed you. I still choose you. They moved in rhythm with the thunder outside, his pace building until her cries filled the room. His name left her lips over and over like it was carved into her spine. His hands gripped her hips tighter, pulling her into every thrust until her climax broke. Her open head tilted back, chest arched, mouth parted in silent ecstasy. But then everything shattered. A knock. One, firm, too late knock. The front door creaked open. Kira. Her heart stopped. Devon's voice. Inside the house, Eli froze above her, breath ragged, still buried deep inside her. Their skin slick, tangled in sheets, the scent of sex thick in the air. Kira's hand flew to her mouth as if she could smother the entire moment. Another footstep. Then another. She scrambled to grab the robe, heart pounding loud enough to echo. Eli stood, eyes wide, lips parted, shirtless, exposed. She pushed him toward the bathroom, barely whispering, "Go, just hide." The door to the room opened just as Eli slipped inside. Devon stood there, soaking wet. His eyes scanned the room, the disheveled bed, the scent. Her robe clutched too late. And then his voice, low and dangerous. "Who the hell is in this house?" "Kira." She didn't answer. Cold in single quotes T. Because the truth was still breathing behind the bathroom door. And this time, it wasn't going to stay hidden. The silence after the question was louder than the thunder still rumbling outside. Kira stood frozen in the bedroom doorway, robe slipping down her shoulder. Strands of hair stuck to her damp skin. Devon's eyes weren't confused anymore, they were cold, calculating. And worst of all, hurt. "Say something," he demanded, stepping farther into the room. Jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle twitch in his cheek. Kira's fingers curled around the doorframe behind her, as if the wood might anchor her from falling apart. "There's no one here," she whispered, but her voice cracked on the lie. He stepped closer, too close. "I'm not an idiot, Kira. I smell him. I see that bed." His voice cracked now, jagged and raw. "Tell me the truth." She looked down, but it didn't matter. The truth was everywhere, in the trembling of her lips, in the heat still clinging to her thighs, in the way her skin flushed from more than just fear. Behind the bathroom door, Eli stood motionless, hearing every word. He wanted to leave, burst through the wall if he had to. But he also knew this was hers to finish. Not hidden, not silenced. Kira lifted her eyes. There were tears, but no panic now. Just something resolute. "You were the right choice, Devon," she said softly. "You were steady, safe. You did everything right." "But," he asked, voice shaking, "but my heart never followed me to the altar." He stared at her like he didn't recognize the woman he'd promised forever to. "I loved him before I ever loved you," she continued. "I tried to forget it. I thought if I buried it deep enough, it would stop breathing, but it never did. A pause. Then, from the edge of his voice, "Is he here?" Kira swallowed. Yes. That one word detonated the room. Devon lunged for the bathroom door, but she blocked him. "No," she shouted, palms against his chest. "Don't touch him." Devon looked at her with a mixture of fury and heartbreak. "You're defending him? You brought him here to our place, and now you protect him?" "I'm not protecting him," she said. "I'm protecting what's left of me." Devon stepped back like her words hit harder than any punch. "Then this marriage is done." She didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't chase. He left, not with a bang, not with a door slam, but with a quiet finality that only broken vows can bring. A few moments passed before Eli stepped out of the bathroom, barefoot, shirt still clutched in his hand. He looked at her like he wasn't sure if he should speak, if he had a right to. She walked to him slowly, standing chest to chest in the wreckage of their choices. "You didn't have to stay," she said quietly. "I did," he replied, "because for once, I wanted you to be the one who walked toward me." She let the robe fall from her shoulders again, not out of seduction this time, but surrender. Honest, naked surrender. "You've seen the worst of me now. I've waited for the worst of you," he said, his voice husky as his hand cupped her cheek. "Because I always knew it was still us underneath everything." Their mouths met again, but this time slower. No rush, no fear, just the fire they'd refused for too long now burning without apology. He lowered her onto the sheets Devon had once claimed, and with every touch, every kiss, every breathless moan, she rewrote what this room meant. Eli made love to her with the care of a man who'd lost her once and never planned to again. His hands traced every curve as if learning her all over again. Her fingers curled against his back, holding him closer, deeper, whispering his name not like a sin this time but a salvation. She cried when she came, choked sobs muffled into his shoulder, not just from pleasure, but release. A lifetime of denial washed away in the rhythm of their bodies. He held her through it, rocking into her gently until they came together, trembling, gasping, ruined, reborn. Afterward, he stayed. She laid with her head on his chest, listening to the beat of a heart that never stopped waiting for hers. "What now?" he asked softly. "I don't know," she whispered. "But I know I won't keep closing doors just to look through keyholes." He kissed the top of her head. "Then let's open them all." And outside, as rain kissed the lake house roof and morning slowly threatened to rise, two souls who had danced on the edge of wrong finally found the courage to call what they had right.